We know that homeless camps aren't necessarily something that are new to our community. However, we have seen things a little bit different this year. We had that late rainfall that really increased the river levels, so camps are a little bit more visible, and we know we have more people experiencing homelessness kind of overall. Brenda, can you talk a little bit about what our internal city departments have been working on in terms of trying to figure out how to address some of these homeless camps and some of the issues that can come up just with those in general?
Absolutely. And so we've got a good group of our internal departments. So we have our police department, our fire department, public works who assists when we do have to do camp cleanup, along with solid waste, public health, harm reduction, and then along with the city parks. A lot of our land adjacent to the river is owned, some of it's owned by the park and some of it is owned by the city. So we really need to collaborate and work closely with our park department as we look at anything moving forward of how to manage and make sure we keep everyone safe as they're camping and waiting for housing. And so we have looked at different paths forward. And so what we're seeing today is an ordinance looking to go forward that does not allow camping, but it's teamed with a resolution that talks about priority enforcement along with looking at engagement with our services and making sure they are engaged with our engagement center and getting connected with those services for housing, along with some guidelines of keeping everyone safe and clean and making sure that everyone is being safe for all.
How do we manage homeless camps in a really responsible way? How do we keep people safe, follow best practices, and ensure we're not just kind of displacing people to other parts of the city? We do know that we tend to have most of our homeless camps along the river, and we also know that nationally, many communities have tried to implement no camping ordinances. However, there's no community in the nation who's seen success in minimizing the number of homeless camps or reducing the overall rate of homelessness strictly through a no camping ordinance. So Jan and Carissa, can you talk a little bit more about what makes our camping ordinance different and how harm reduction really plays a key role in engaging with folks outside around what we're trying to do to keep everybody safe?
The majority of the folks down there, they want safety too. They don't want to be viewed the way they know they're being viewed right now. And they know that they're paying the price for the decisions just a very few people have made. And I think that that's been one of the more powerful lessons for me is knowing that, what's happening right now does affect them and what we're hearing, what people are saying, all of that really does affect them. And I feel really good about the fact that our city is taking a different approach than some cities have taken. And rather than just going in and taking down the camps without any plan whatsoever, we're trying to create a path forward with this ordinance by having this resolution that allows us to keep working with people, but only when they meet certain terms, which is an okay thing to do because we all have to meet terms daily, just existing among others. So those are all designed to keep people safe. They're all designed to keep the environment clean. And really, I don't think that there's any concern that's at least been voiced to me that isn't addressed by the items or the expectations that we have stated in that resolution.
And so part of kind of those best practices that we talk about when we think about what it means to responsibly remove camps, that doesn't mean that people aren't given any warning, and it doesn't mean that we aren't following up with resources about how they can move out of that situation. And so can we talk also, Jan, maybe a little bit about what Housing First is and how this camping ordinance and resolution is really allowing us to maintain that relationship with the folks sleeping outside while we develop those pathways to housing?
Sure. So Housing First, I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about Housing First in recent months, and I'm really happy about that as well. First of all, there aren't preconditions for folks to move into housing. Second of all, we really believe that people can recover from whatever it is that they would like to seek recovery from. We know that with the right types of supports, and that's a really big piece of this, is it has to be the right types of support for people in those programs. We know that the retention rate, or that many of those, nearly 80% or more, are still housed after the first year, which is far longer than we see with those folks who could have used the support and didn't get it. And that's what we've been doing for years and years, housing people and not always providing the support they need and expecting them to just go it alone. And they feel isolated, lonely, kind of like a raft at sea. And without that connection, it's really tough to keep people housed.
So we know that we've had a couple of different events so far this year talking about Housing First, the different strategies that communities use to implement Housing First. One thing that many communities struggle with is ensuring that there is kind of available housing stock, so to speak, for that immediate movement into permanent housing. And so we've discussed utilizing a master leasing strategy alongside with that Housing First approach to make sure that people actually have a housing unit that they're able to move into and then provide those wraparound services. And so it seems like we're kind of trying to move through this pathway of how do we manage this current crisis and ultimately get our community to a place where we want to be, where everyone has a place to live.
For sure. And when everyone has a place to live or that option's there, then they don't need to camp anymore. And we don't need to make any concessions related to camping when we know the resources are there. Accessible, affordable housing, and the supports that people need. That's how we eliminate camping along the river.
I really appreciate that point, Jan, because I think, when we talk about having a shared goal as interdepartmental agencies within the city, being that we don't have homeless camps anymore, it's not because we've forcibly removed all of them and not given people any option about where to go after that, but that we've actually done it in this really strategic way to ensure that people have stability and the access to the resources they need. And that just seems really different from some of the other communities that I know we've looked at. Brenda, do you want to speak at all to maybe what some of the other communities we've seen, the ordinances that they've tried to pass, and just how this ordinance is just so much different from what we've seen in some of those other communities that are similar to ours?
So lately we've been watching, so Brainerd's been looking at no camping ordinance. And then Duluth has adopted their no camping ordinance now. And so just kind of looking at within their ordinance, they listed where they would start enforcement, knowing that they can't enforce all areas at all times. And so what we tried to do is really take a holistic look at it. We're working so hard, looking at Housing First and how it works and educating the community on Housing First. And so just kind of how do we incorporate that into a no camping ordinance? Also making sure that we're investing in our services. So we're investing in providing services and connecting our unhoused to services and making sure that those that are camping and that they have the ability to connect with those services. Looking at the other ordinances, they don't have a resolution, nor do they have guidelines that they're working with their unhoused population of what those can look like to make sure everyone's safe. It's just a removal, which what we've seen is if you remove them in one place, they probably will go somewhere else. And so that's not stopping the camping, it's just moving it around.
So what I really appreciate about our ordinance is that it is paired with that resolution, and that is really a unique approach to our area. And you talk about services. And so one of the things that is outlined in those expectations is connecting with the outreach team as they're coming around and providing, those basic needs like garbage bags to ensure people can meet those expectations, and also staying connected to us at the Downtown Engagement Center. And one thing that I don't think everybody knows about the Downtown Engagement Center is that was actually a recommendation that came out of the 2018 Downtown in Focus Plan. So there was widespread recognition kind of throughout the community that our unhoused neighbors needed a place place to be during the day and access to resources. And so when we had the opportunity to create the Downtown Engagement Center, we were ultimately fulfilling a need that we had talked about back in 2018. And so Jan and Carissa, can you help connect again kind of this strategy around the management of homeless camps with the ultimate mission of the Downtown Engagement Center?
Ultimately, the goal is to connect people to services that we know and trust. We have a number of agencies that are right inside the engagement center and based out of there, but we also have a ton of partners that are community-based that come in and assist. And it's working. We've seen many, many people get housed. Some of those folks have stayed in housing for quite some time. Others maybe lost housing and then learned enough about what went wrong to try it again and get housed. We just keep trying again and again and again. And that's what works. The folks that hang out downtown who might be unhoused, they're hanging out because they don't have anywhere else to be, and they have a sense of community as well. And as we get people housed, we have to really be thoughtful about their connections to community and really addressing that loneliness and isolation piece.
So, Chris, I want to jump back to a little bit about the resolution and those expectations for homeless camps. So one of the things that is outlined in those expectations is kind of a geographic area where camping will temporarily be authorized while we do not have those available shelter or housing resources in the community. And from my understanding, and based on the outreach that you've done, that area was chosen because that's kind of where people already are. Can you talk a little bit more about, how your team goes out and does outreach with those camps and just kind of what you have been seeing in that kind of river corridor?
That is one of the highest areas that people have already been with, even with the engagement center. That's of all the years I have been doing outreach, that's where we have seen a lot of folks. I think that's where they feel the most safest in that area. It's not as close to the river because it's with the flooding. But one of the biggest things is the relationship piece is huge. So when we are going down there and doing that outreach with the folks that are sleeping outside, hey, how's it going? Introduce ourselves, let them know what we do. Have they ever been to the engagement center? Have they ever been to a shelter in the local area? If they're new to town, that kind of changes the conversation. Like, hi, we'll be back tomorrow. If you don't want to talk to us today, that's completely fine. But, we'll be back here tomorrow. And then the next day we come back and that conversation may look a little bit different.
And so from what I also understand about your outreach efforts is that the majority of the folks who are living outside along the river are either folks who've been homeless for a long time in our community, or they tend to be folks who are brand new to homelessness in our community. And that's because those shelters are full. Is that still kind of accurate for what you're seeing?
Yes, a lot of the folks that we are seeing are from this area and they have tried to get into shelters, but they're completely full, or just their own sort of crisis that they may be going through, that trauma, that when the shelters are full, that they don't want to engage in that, just based off of their own personal history.
And so, it sounds to me like, again, these expectations are just a really thoughtful implementation of trying to minimize the displacement of people while we also meet some basic expectations for the safety of the entire community, which includes our unhoused, and just try to move our community into this better place where everybody does have a place to live. And it tends to be the fact that there just isn't enough housing available in the community. That's why folks remain homeless. We know that the folks who are currently living outside and unsheltered have kind of individual vulnerabilities that may have led to their homeless situation. But the reason why they remain homeless is because we just don't have that available housing. And so really creating that pathway to permanent housing as a part of this camping strategy is kind of a really crucial part. And so I think that's part of maybe been a misperception for people in the community about what we're trying to achieve here. It's not to just displace people endlessly and re-traumatize them. It's how do we have this really managed, thoughtful approach to keep people safe while we get those additional options. So I think our shared goal of having this kind of panel discussion today was just to inform the community about all of the different pieces of this ordinance and the resolution, as well as some of the values that we're trying to approach this situation with, which is really rooted in, having that responsible, managed approach, keeping our entire community safe, and again, making sure that we are building those pathways to permanent housing as we're just kind of in this management phase right now. Is there anything else that you all wanted to share maybe about the experience of collaborating on this, or maybe even our hopes and dreams for our unhoused neighbors in the community.
You know, ordinances aren't an easy thing to enact. They take over a month to get them enacted. And so that's the whole point of a resolution, that it is very flexible. And as we see that something's not working, we can get that right back in front of the commission and make changes. And so that is the point of doing a very simple ordinance along with the resolution guidelines, that as we keep collaborating through this time, that we can make those changes as needed.
Thank you, Brenda. That's super important.
And I was just going to add too is that I know Jan talked a little bit about that there may be camps that are outside in that little area, but reporting to Fargo 1 gets us a spot to be able to connect with folks right away so that we know, because sometimes we don't know that someone is sleeping all the way out on 52nd underneath that little bridge out there. But once we get those connections, then we can get out there as soon as possible to get so that they are in an area that we can connect them with.
So we encourage the public to make reports into Fargo 1 for any homeless camps they find, or if they know somebody is sleeping unsheltered in their neighborhood, let us know so we can connect and provide those resources. Thank you, Carissa.
I think that, patience, right? This takes a ton of patience. As Brenda said, it takes quite some time to get some of this stuff to move through the process, and we want to move as fast as we can. What we've done historically in our community hasn't worked when it comes to dismantling camps, and we have to take a new approach. We're really fortunate that we have the lessons of many other communities to lean on when making decisions. You know, it's not made lightly. We know what others have tried and what's worked and what hasn't. And what we're doing right now is hopefully taking us toward solutions, not just the resolution, but actual solutions, so that we're not having this conversation next year at this time.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for being here today and helping us educate the community about, what is going on with homelessness and homeless camps. And I also want to encourage the public. We do have a public comment opportunity available. There's still a couple of weeks before the City Commission will vote on the ordinance and the resolution. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback on the ordinance, the resolution, those expectations, what you like, what you're concerned about, so that we can make sure that we're meeting the needs of the entire community. So that is an online comment forum, and we'll link that for you so that you can provide that. Thank you again.